You first, when you take a look at both of these QBs, who had the most impressive start so far in the preseason?
Well, to me, it was Shedeur. I didn't see any interceptions when he was out there. Didn't see anything like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Dillon Gabriel did a bad job. I was impressed with the brother, but I'm going to go with Shedeur. You know, the pressure was on him. The spotlight was on him.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just call out Dillon Gabriel. He held him accountable and made him rethink his comments. The moment Dillon Gabriel spoke and went after Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't a minor slip. He crossed the line and stepped directly into Stephen A. Smith's wheelhouse. And Smith answered with a clear, direct response that left no room for misinterpretation.
The comparisons were emanating from the media more so than anybody else. And that's what I think, that's exactly who I think he was directing his comments towards. Having said that, Dillon Gabriel, respectfully, it was stupid. A very dumb comment to make. First of all, let me tell you something right now. In every walk of life, far beyond the parameters of a football field.
This wasn't casual sports commentary, it was a decisive critique. Dillon Gabriel's comments were taken apart by Stephen A. Smith with clear, direct points. Gabriel, a quarterback with solid stats but limited top-level achievements, chose to take a public shot at Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, who has handled sustained media scrutiny and on-field expectations, became the target of an unnecessary criticism. Smith responded by challenging Gabriel's standing to make that claim, and by defending Sanders on the facts. The outcome was clear. Gabriel overreached, and Sanders didn't deserve the hit.
Dan Orlovsky would sit up here in comparison to Shedeur Sanders, who did no such thing, and say, hey, thought he looked better. I got to give him the edge here. I thought it wasn't bad. A pick six and a fumble, and we can get over fumbles. Have you heard anybody say that? I know it's possible. Have you ever heard anybody say, we get over?
Stephen A. Smith responded immediately. As soon as Dillon Gabriel made his comments about Shedeur Sanders, Smith delivered a clear, point-by-point critique that drew national attention across the NCAA media cycle. Dillon Gabriel has a reputation as a good quarterback, not a dominant one. He can post strong numbers against opponents like Tulsa, but his performance has been inconsistent when the stakes and competition rise to playoff level.
Well, those who produce get treated differently than those who don't. What he said echoes the mentality of all of America practically, and most certainly the world, as we see things being globalized more and more every day. It was a stupid, idiotic, immature comment, because clearly you were feeling the heat because a lot of people was talking about how Shedeur should be QB.
Dillon Gabriel is a capable quarterback, but not a standout. Even so, he chose to talk down to Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback who has navigated constant scrutiny and pressure and still represents the future of a program that was struggling before he arrived. The comparison was weak. The criticism was unnecessary. Stephen A. Smith recognized that and dismantled Gabriel's argument with a clear, direct response.
How the Browns react to this, how the locker room reacts to this, how Shedeur reacts to this, because it was a clear shot at Shedeur. But let's say Dillon Gabriel's talking about the media. How could you be a brand new quarterback in the NFL and the first time you get behind a mic after your first game, you throw the media under the bus? That's arrogance.
Stephen A. Smith excels in moments like this. When Dillon Gabriel made his remarks about Shedeur Sanders, Smith responded with a focused, direct critique. He questioned Gabriel's standing to make that claim, noting that Gabriel has transferred between programs and has not been a Heisman finalist. Without theatrics, Smith laid out why Gabriel's resume doesn't justify taking public shots at Sanders. Smith's point was clear. Targeting Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback central to his program's future and consistently under intense scrutiny, was misplaced. Gabriel's criticism lacked the substance to support it, and Smith methodically showed why.
Content today on his 42nd I want you to be meaner. Birthday. That's number one. Number two, after the game, the Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said there was a mix-up in the routes and that players were in the area that they shouldn't have been.
Look at Stephen A's face. Look at Stephen A's face. Look at
Stephen A.
Oh my Lord.
The strength of Stephen A. Smith's response was that he didn't just address Gabriel's remarks. He challenged the image around him. Dillon Gabriel often presents himself as an overlooked contender ready to surprise. But the reality is that his profile hasn't commanded broad attention. It's a clear reminder that not every opinion carries equal weight. In defending Shedeur Sanders, Stephen A. was direct and precise. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback. He is Deion Sanders' son, which subjects him to scrutiny far beyond anything Gabriel has faced. Even under that pressure, Shedeur has maintained his composure, shown confidence, and delivered in key moments that helped revive a program many had written off.
Stupidity, all of it. I thought it was a clear shot at Shedeur due to the fact that his Oregon coach threw a shot at Coach Prime and Shedeur during their meeting at Colorado last year. But you know what? The cream rises to the top. Let's see what happens this week. I see a lot of the media talking about they think it was about the media and not about Shedeur. And I think that's a chess move.
For Dillon Gabriel to take shots at Shedeur Sanders was a miscalculation. Stephen A. Smith made the mismatch clear. Gabriel's attempt to shame Sanders was unnecessary and counterproductive. You don't target Deion Sanders' son when Deion has turned Colorado into primetime television. It underscored that Dillon Gabriel has often played with a chip on his shoulder because the spotlight hasn't followed him. He has been around long enough to compile numbers but not to earn broad respect. That's why going after Shedeur was misguided. Sanders, despite ups and downs, drives headlines. Gabriel's most notable headlines have been his transfers. Stephen A. Smith pressed that point without hesitation, challenging Gabriel's standing and leaving his argument looking like a forced throw that turns into a pick six.
You know what? Still needs to thank me a little bit more for that restaurant I treated him and his family to, because it was big time, and stop embarrassing me by going places and trying to use coupons. That's how pathetic he is. The point is that a pick six and a fumble is usually considered a bad day.
Stephen A. Smith didn't need to raise his voice to make the point. He presented Dillon Gabriel as a player whose talk outpaces his resume and defended Shedeur Sanders with clear comparisons. That's why he called Gabriel out so directly. The comparison wasn't just unfair, it was forced. Now look at Gabriel's record. The numbers are solid and he can win against average defenses, but the resume lacks defining markers. There's no sustained Heisman contention, no late season surge that reshaped the national picture, and no postseason moment that cements a legacy. The track record reflects steady production, not top-tier impact. That's the gap Smith underscored. Gabriel's criticism of Shedeur Sanders wasn't supported by what he has accomplished, while Sanders continues to carry a program under constant scrutiny.
Let's see some of them step up and make some plays out there.
Ain't no way.
Gabriel
Ain't no way. He's not built like that. No way.
And this one is picked off and going back the other way.
Oh my God, why did he stop playing?
Now it's a foot race. And that is that.
They told me bust out my AP, perfect timing. H-shot, we about to get legendary. Shedeur start the next game, baby. Shout out Dillon though, you know what I'm saying? Bro, I love you, my heart. What am I bigger than cheese, bro? You know what I'm saying? But Shedeur got it.
Shedeur Sanders is a national brand who draws viewers for both performance and result. Dillon Gabriel's attempt to diminish him read as resentment. And Stephen A. Smith called out the insecurity and lack of awareness directly. Colorado under Deion Sanders is prime time, and Shedeur sits at the center of that spotlight. If Gabriel expected the sports world to agree while he took a shot at Shedeur, he misread the moment. Smith dismantled the argument and questioned the credibility behind it. Gabriel will move on. He'll keep playing, give interviews, and have fans, but this exchange will trail his media profile as a reminder of a misstep. It's a clear example of a resume that doesn't justify taking public aim at a quarterback carrying that level of scrutiny and responsibility.
For the Cleveland Browns preseason game today is that the way that some white folks watched Shedeur Sanders last week is the way that some black folks were watching Dillon Gabriel today. And it's not Dillon Gabriel for Dillon Gabriel's sake. Most folks don't have a problem with Dillon Gabriel. It's what he represents, which is the disrespect of a black person for no other apparent reason than they are a confident black person.
Dillon Gabriel thought he was aiming up. Instead, he was placed back among quarterbacks who are good but not great. Stephen A. Smith made the central point. Dillon Gabriel doesn't shape the conversation. Sports are about narrative as much as numbers, and Gabriel's story doesn't move the culture, while Shedeur Sanders does. Smith highlighted that contrast clearly. By the end, Gabriel's credibility had taken a measurable hit. The critique was decisive and sent a broader message to any player considering public shots at Shedeur Sanders. If you step into that debate, you will be held to a higher standard and your resume will be tested. Dillon Gabriel learned that the hard way. They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive, a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with seven-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Feinbaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Feinbaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Feinbaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created, the exposure for historically black colleges, the draft picks developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons Shedeur and Shiloh or two-way standout Travis Hunt. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention, attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffalo season to a win total prop. 6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. Success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. That influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Feinbaum's soundbite will fade, while Sanders' imprint endures. In the end, accusations of hypocrisy say more about the accuser than the coach. Sanders has remained consistent: empower athletes, hold adults accountable, accountable and inject stability before unchecked money corrodes the locker room. The people who stand to lose clout in that environment prefer the chaos they can manipulate. Sanders prefers a system that nurtures the players who make the sport worth watching. His advocacy is rooted in experience, not self-interest, and his critics will have to decide whether to engage with that reality or keep shouting from the sidelines. They say training camp decides depth charts, but Shedeur Sanders began fighting for his job long before he will step inside the Browns facility. While most first-year players squeezed in one last vacation, he slipped onto a private field in Texas, strapped on Cleveland's helmet and shoulder pads, pulled a fresh number 2 jersey over his chest, and started rifling timing routes as if it were the opening drive of week 1. No cameras, no hype track, no product placement, just sweat, cadence, and ball placement. A rookie does not rehearse in full game gear unless he already envisions himself commanding the huddle. Plenty of observers shrug that clip off. They insist the 5th rounder, quote, isn't ready, cling to depth chart conventions, or whisper that the name across his shoulders did most of the talking on draft day. Maybe it is the Deion connection, maybe it is a preference for prospects who blend quietly into the background, or maybe the league's gatekeepers fear the possibility that the kid is better than the quarterbacks they have spent months promoting. Whatever the motive, the countdown has started, and video rarely lies. Shedeur Sanders is not preparing to arrive. He is preparing to lead. Footage of a 22-year-old quarterback running live reps in July should dominate highlight loops, but it barely registers on national outlets. Why? It ruins the tidy narrative. The easy storyline paints Shedeur as a pampered legacy prospect banking on his father's fame. Yet the tape shows something different. A rookie drenched in afternoon heat, drilling footwork, calling protections, and imagining cover 2 rotation before the first official meeting ever takes place. Elite mental prep looks boring on social feeds. It looks devastating when the season starts. Walk into Cleveland's quarterback room and you step into politics, not simply competition. Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl MVP in decline, carries institutional trust. Kenny Pickett, rescued from Pittsburgh's reset, carries hometown intrigue. Dillon Gabriel, the 3rd-round system fit, carries draft capital the staff must justify. And then there's Shedeur, the lightning rod whose presence alone spotlights every bias in the evaluation process. Coaches frame it neatly. Rookies must wait their turn. The truth is less polite. Practice snaps are currency. Perception is elastic, and early allocations already favor Pickett and Flacco. It is the oldest playbook in the league. Lock vets into the headline roles before pads even crack. Then let repetition shape reality. Sanders refuses to cooperate. He is not a 4th-string camp arm. He has engineered game-winning drives under national scrutiny, operated against live blitz looks most prospects never face, and more than any quarterback in the room, documented his own offseason obsession. No social media rollout, no brand consultant, just pads, cleats, and an unlit practice field. If his last name were Smith, pundits would label him the sleeper of camp. Instead, politics trails every throw. Training camp rotations expose organizational intent. Beat writer Fred Greetham already reports that Pickett and Flacco will open with first-team reps when veterans report July 23rd. Gabriel grabs the developmental snaps, leaving Sanders the leftovers. That isn't performance-based, it's narrative-safe. Gabriel doesn't threaten hierarchy, Sanders bends gravity. Watch the details. Does Shedeur steal 11-on-11 snaps with the 2s? Does he run red zone installs or 2-minute drills? If he does, coaches are admitting he is forcing his way in. If he doesn't, they are postponing the inevitable. Either way, the private field reps have sharpened his timing and condensed his release. He is not hoping for an opportunity, he is prepared to seize one the instant it appears. Cleveland's joint practices amplify that tension. First come live periods against the Panthers, then sessions with the champion Eagles. Those reps belong to the starters, so Flacco and Pickett will absorb most of Carolina's disguised pressure and Philadelphia's exotic fronts. Sanders' proving ground will be the preseason opener on August 8th. Under the stadium lights, he will get entire series, real reads, pockets collapsing for real. If his command mirrors the footage from Texas, coaches will have to answer why he never saw earlier work. Reps are scarce. 10 padded practices separate veteran arrival from game 1. Even an even split, something that never happens, would hardly suffice. Instead, the staff will funnel snaps toward the comfortable choices. That strategy can bury a rookie, but it can also spark an eruption when limited opportunities turn into highlight drives. One flawless touchdown march in the second half of a preseason game, and the dog pound will chant his name. Then the staff's narrative control evaporates. Criticism of Sanders has never matched the scrutiny applied to his peers. Analysts nitpick a ball pat, a foot angle, a pump fake, Pickett's inconsistency, Flacco's diminishing velocity, Gabriel's college system crutches. Discuss politely, if at all. With Shedeur, the critiques arrive as coded doubts. Does he rely on the family brand? Is he coachable? Can he stay humble? That double standard is as old as the league's resistance to outspoken black quarterbacks. Add Dion's unapologetic persona, and each Sanders rep becomes a referendum on establishment comfort levels. Shedeur answers not with rebuttals but with work. Work captured in silent footage more deafening than any debate show monologue. Quarterback drama masks broader roster cracks. The Browns receiver group is crowded yet unproven. The safety room failed to create turnovers a year ago, interior defensive linemen are still rehabbing, and the offensive line must retool on the fly. Which quarterback can navigate that turbulence? Flacco's pocket mobility is limited, Pickett's confidence remains fragile, Gabriel is months away from processing NFL disguises, Sanders, forged by perpetual doubt, offers poise under chaos and meticulous preparation, a combination this franchise has lacked since, well, almost forever. Forget politics, depth chart etiquette, and recycled sound bites about developmental timelines. The only metric that counts now is who did the work. Sanders pounding through full gear scripts in late June is not vanity, it's vision. While the league sleeps, he refines his drop steps. While media speculate, he rehearses third down checks. He has already decided what he is. The organization must decide if it can recognize it in time. The preseason will provide the answer. Live bullets, real blitzes, stadium noise. When those throws leave his hand under pressure, no one will discuss ball pats or surnames. They will ask how a quarterback this prepared slipped to round 5. And if the performance matches the preparation, excuses about lack of reps will dissolve. It will be production against perception, and Shedeur Sanders has been producing where no one could see. Ready is the wrong word. He has been ready. Chris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a 5th-round pick, as unprepared to start and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detail the rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement. The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics in interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a 5th-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear: the most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate has trended in his favor since early June. The organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles: processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws in full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review. None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season under center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work.
You can't fire the owner because he can't fire himself. Yeah, someone's head's going to roll, unfortunately, in this situation, and it's probably Stefanski and Barry.
I saw on The Athletic.
I don't think that's fair, by the way. Stefanski, that part.
I agree. I was saying the other day on my podcast that Barry should be fired, and I said I wouldn't fire Stefanski, but a couple of people made the point of saying, well, if you fire the GM, you got to give him a chance to hire his own coach, which is fair.
That's true.
So I would fire Barry. I would hire a new GM. If that GM thinks Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, wants to stick with him.
Right. The situation in Cleveland has escalated with the NFL. Sources indicate GM Andrew Barry is prepared to move on from head coach Kevin Stefanski if he refuses to elevate Shedeur Sanders. The Browns are weighing a major quarterback change. Leadership appears to be aligning behind Sanders and pushing for immediate action. This is a high-stakes decision about control and the team's direction.
I think it's unfair for me to comment in I guess, maybe on behalf of the industry. All I can say is this, the time that we spent with Shedeur, and what he's done throughout his college career is impressive. He's an impressive young man. He's a really good quarterback. Sometimes, fit comes into play. And I'd also say this, there are 4 more rounds of the draft. And then maybe lastly, it's less about where you get picked and what you do after you get picked. That's really the most important thing. Getting to know him over the course of the spring, he has a ton of resolve.
Andrew Berry appears to be at a breaking point. Pressure from fans and within the organization to play Shedeur Sanders is intensifying. Berry is pushing for a move towards Sanders, while head coach Kevin Stefanski remains cautious about altering the depth chart. The divide is clear. One side wants acceleration, the other a measured rollout. The organization is under heavy scrutiny, and the focus has shifted to when, not if, Sanders sees the field.
Has the fourth highest odds of any head coach this season to be fired. He's clearly on the hot seat. It's been a discussion for really a couple years now, dating back to last season's 3-win season. And he's always had kind of hot and cold seasons. And now the sports books are saying he's fourth on the list. Number 1 is Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins, Brian Dable of the Giants at 2, Shane Steichen at 3, and there is Kevin Stefanski plus 650 to be fired.
This has moved beyond tension to outright stubbornness. Rather than elevating Shedeur Sanders, the staff has chosen Dillon Gabriel. The current depth chart looks less like a forward plan and more like resistance to change. Fans have been clear about who they expect to see, yet the organization keeps delaying. Every week without a real evaluation of Sanders slows development and blurs accountability. Cleveland is choosing a conservative approach when a decisive decision is needed, sending a message of uncertainty to both the locker room and the city.
Now being the third-string quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, was that so much was made out of unbelievable. He actually made the team as the third-string quarterback. Like that was a big deal. Like that was somewhat of a surprise to a lot of people. He should have been the first pick in the draft.
Kevin Stefanski appears to be doubling down to validate his approach. Despite sustained demand from Browns fans to see Shedeur Sanders reflected in chants, merchandise, and constant discussion, he continues to keep Dillon Gabriel in front on the depth chart. The decision functions as an assertion of control rather than a response to momentum. Even with clear signals from the fan base, Stefanski is staying with Gabriel and delaying a full evaluation of Sanders. It is a deliberate choice to maintain his plan and pacing, not to accelerate change. Cleveland is prioritizing continuity over recalibration, keeping any transition to Sanders on hold.
But yeah, the Browns are in a tough spot. They have wasted. You traded a ton of high draft capital to get Deshaun Watson. You've gotten nothing out of Deshaun Watson and missed an opportunity. Who knows who they would have drafted? Now, maybe they would have screwed up those picks and the Browns would still be in bad shape.
Andrew Berry is likely frustrated watching Dillon Gabriel default to conservative throws while the offense stalls. From a football perspective, this appears to be the hill Kevin Stefanski is choosing to stand on. Keeping Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders has limited the unit's explosiveness and prevented a full evaluation of a higher ceiling option. Drives end quickly, field position flips, and momentum is lost while Sanders remains on the sideline. Fan patience is wearing thin. Each ineffective series intensifies criticism and shifts scrutiny toward the coaching staff's criteria for the depth chart. With every additional snap for Gabriel, the decision reads less like an open competition and more like rigid adherence to a plan that isn't producing results. The optics are clear. A dynamic quarterback sits while a cautious approach keeps the offense in neutral. If this continues, accountability questions will grow inside and outside the building. What performance benchmarks keep Gabriel ahead of Sanders? When will Sanders receive first-team reps in live situations to allow a fair comparison? The front office must decide whether to preserve continuity or pivot toward a timely assessment of Sanders. The longer the current approach stays in place, the more it signals stubbornness rather than adaptation, and the more pressure mounts to realign the plan with on-field output.
I honestly see it happening if the Browns lose a bunch of games. If they get 5 wins or less, I see the report coming out now that Stefanski will be fired. I don't want it to happen. I want the Browns to be good, win a bunch of games. I think that they're going to be a team that is slept on and can at least get 7 wins, which is why if they don't, I see Stefanski getting all the blame for that. and there'll be a new coach in Cleveland. Because their players, to me, are there once again. We've talked about the incredible rookie class.
The approach in Cleveland lacks consistency. One week, Andrew Berry signals he wants Shedeur Sanders on the field. The next, Dillon Gabriel gets the reps and the plan stays conservative. Through it all, Kevin Stefanski shows limited urgency despite pressure on his job security. Fans are asking for an offense that can push the ball, change field position, and produce points. Instead, the unit leans on short throws and cautious sequencing. Gabriel's play keeps the ceiling low and momentum static, while a full evaluation of Sanders is postponed. The result is growing frustration and a clear disconnect between the front office, coaching staff, and expectations in the stadium.
The NFL tried to teach him and his father a lesson. You don't act like that. You don't talk like that before a draft. We'll show you how our game is played. We will watch you plummet all the way. I think he would have gone undrafted except for that owner in Cleveland. And he is the key to everything because he is something of an against the grain maverick owner. He's kind of a wannabe Jerry.
Fan speculation is growing. Some believe Kevin Stefanski lacks confidence in Shedeur Sanders. Others think he's prioritizing Dillon Gabriel for reasons unrelated to performance. A more extreme view claims Stefanski is manipulating outcomes to secure a buyout. Whatever the motive, the risk is clear. This approach is straining his relationship with GM Andrew Berry and alienating the fan base. Pressure is rising, Berry's patience is running out, and supporters have shifted from requests to demands. If the current plan continues, calls for a change in quarterback and accountability will intensify.
Sometime last week, and then, and I just tweeted that out again this morning, and then today, the Joe Flacco one got posted. So running through this, and then of course we'll still have Dillon will be next, and then Shedeur will come last.
As training camp nears, Mary Kay Cabot is providing straightforward analysis of the Cleveland Browns quarterback competition. The starter has not been named, but she has moved away from her earlier skepticism of Shedeur Sanders and now acknowledges his talent and potential. Cabot explained that if Joe Flacco is chosen to start week 1, it will mean he is the most prepared to play immediately. This approach would also give younger quarterbacks such as Kenny Pickett time to adjust, refine their skills, and maximize their potential while Flacco handles the early workload. She added that a Flacco start would not prevent Sanders from earning the position later in the season. The depth chart remains flexible, and Sanders' continued development could put him in line for an opportunity as circumstances evolve. Cabot also noted that Pickett could win the job for week 1, but he must demonstrate he can integrate smoothly with the offense and perform reliably under pressure. The Browns want a leader who can control the huddle, execute plays efficiently, and maintain composure. Pickett's performances in upcoming practices and preseason games will be critical in determining whether he secures the starting role or Sanders ultimately takes the reins as the season progresses.
Things like that. It doesn't mean that that Kenny can't swoop in there and steal that job by them, but he's really going to have to show that he has a complete mastery of this scheme and this system, and that they don't have to dial it back a lot to put him in there. So these will be some considerations, and I do think that that as the preseason goes along, it will become evident.
Mary Kay Cabot recently stated that Shedeur Sanders is ready and the Cleveland Browns are monitoring him closely. After a strong showing during organized team activities and minicamp, Sanders has made notable strides in his development. With continued progress, he is expected to return to the field prepared to contribute meaningfully. The Browns coaching staff is tracking his growth, and anticipation about his long-term role is increasing. Cabot added that if Sanders maintains this trajectory and continues to demonstrate poise within the team, he will have a legitimate chance to earn the starting quarterback job. Each practice rep strengthens his case, reinforcing the possibility that his development could benefit both the player and the organization. As Sanders impresses, discussion about his future in Cleveland becomes more compelling. Cabot also emphasized Sanders' advanced understanding of the offense. She noted that his football IQ appears in every drill and that he seems ready to execute the Browns system at full speed. His ability to process defenses quickly and make decisive reads distinguishes him from his peers. With the appropriate opportunity, Cabot believes Sanders could become a genuine difference maker for the Browns. One One area Cabot highlighted is Sanders' command of pre-snap adjustments. His capacity to diagnose defensive fronts and communicate changes gives him an edge and reflects high football intelligence. If he translates those reads into consistent connections with his playmakers, he could elevate the Browns' offense significantly. By comparison, Cabot said quarterback Dillon Gabriel is still refining his grasp of complex terminology and play calling. While Gabriel possesses upside, Sanders' comfort with intricate concepts and his ability to manage tight pockets under pressure give him a clear advantage at this stage. Gabriel must sharpen those elements to compete at Sanders' level. Cabot previously reported that Sanders had already earned first-team practice snaps ahead of Gabriel. Her latest update confirms that Sanders is now approved as the Browns' starting quarterback, solidifying the organization's commitment to him as QB1. Expectations are high, and his response to the challenge will be closely watched throughout training camp and preseason. Cabot further noted that head coach Kevin Stefanski authorized Sanders to take expanded first-team reps beginning next month. This milestone underscores Sanders' readiness and the coaching staff's confidence in his progress. As the regular season approaches, Sanders aims to cement his status as the starter, and the competition for that position is intensified. Though Sanders leads the race, Kenny Pickett remains in contention. Cabot stressed that Pickett must prove he can integrate seamlessly with the offense and perform consistently under pressure. His performance over the next several weeks will determine whether he can challenge Sanders for the starting role. With both quarterbacks vying for the top spot, the Browns' Week 1 starter will be one of the most scrutinized decisions of the upcoming season. For now, Cabot's reporting underscores Sanders' rapid ascent, strong football intellect, and growing command of the offense, qualities that position him well to lead Cleveland's offense when the opportunity arrives. Many observers declared Deion Sanders was finished. They argued that his public style attracted unnecessary attention, that his health had deteriorated too far, and that his coaching career was approaching an abrupt conclusion. They misread his resolve. When speculation intensified, Sanders did not schedule a press conference or issue a formal statement. Instead, he released a short video recorded at his Texas home, walking alongside recording artist Lil Wayne. The footage established two facts. Although Sanders still walks with a limp, he remains active, and he intends to return to the sideline. Reports from USA Today and ESPN confirm that Sanders had temporarily left Colorado to recover from a significant, undisclosed medical condition. He lost 14 pounds and missed several summer practices, leading to widespread debate about his future. Unofficial sources suggested complications related to previous blood clot issues, but no official diagnosis was provided. Throughout Sanders' absence, numerous media outlets framed his situation in crisis language, frequently questioning whether he would coach again. By comparison, when coaches such as Lincoln Riley paused their duties for health or family reasons, coverage emphasized understanding and patience, an imbalance that reflects a common difference in how high-profile black coaches are treated. Sanders' silence was not a retreat, it was a period of recovery. During rehabilitation, he relied on family, faith, and trusted colleagues, yet stayed connected to his program through brief online updates. The video with Lil Wayne demonstrated that he retained strong support from influential friends, countering narratives that portrayed him as isolated or on the verge of retirement. The visual evidence showed that his setback is temporary, and that he remains determined to lead Colorado into the forthcoming season. Since accepting the Colorado position, Sanders has dramatically elevated the program's national standing. He first drew national attention to Jackson State and the broader HBCU football landscape, then moved to Boulder and transformed a one-win team into a central storyline in college athletics. His approach, combining hip-hop culture, direct communication, and open expressions of faith, has challenged conventional expectations for head coach behavior. Each step forward has been met with heightened scrutiny. His time at Jackson State was labeled a publicity stunt, his departure for Colorado was framed as abandoning HBCU culture, and his social media presence has been cast as distraction from traditional coaching responsibility. Critics often magnify Sanders' missteps and question his motives, while comparable actions by other coaches receive neutral or sympathetic coverage. Showings of enthusiasm from Brett Favre and disciplinary intensity from Nick Saban are celebrated as competitive passion, yet Sanders' displays of confidence are frequently labeled arrogance. The discrepancy illustrates deeper biases rather than differences in performance. Sanders' success challenges entrenched expectations of how a college football leader should look, speak, and act, especially a black coach who refuses to downplay his identity. During his convalescence, Sanders maintained close communication with his staff and athletes, reinforcing the standards he had established: discipline, accountability, and belief. The program's daily messaging continued to emphasize preparation and resilience, signaling that Sanders' influence persists even when he is away from campus. Athletes echoed his mantras during workouts, confirming that his leadership extends beyond physical presence. Sanders acknowledges the seriousness of his medical challenge, but has refused to let it define him. He has publicly discussed leaning on scripture and prayer, explaining that his purpose as a mentor, father, and coach extends beyond personal adversity. In that context, the video of him walking in the Texas sun was less a strategic media effort than a straightforward demonstration of continued commitment to his team and mission. Colorado still requires Sanders' vision. Prior to his arrival, attendance was low, national media attention was minimal, and recruiting momentum had stalled. Sanders' leadership brought renewed energy, authentic identity, and higher standards of accountability. Players who previously lacked representation in college football leadership found a coach who shares, affirms, and elevates their cultural background. Sanders supplements conventional coaching priorities, scheme, fundamentals, and execution with empowerment initiatives that cultivate self-confidence and authenticity. As preseason camp approaches, Sanders intends to resume full involvement, even if medical recovery remains ongoing. His presence is expected to restore on-site leadership, stabilize the locker room, and direct media coverage toward on-field progress. For Sanders, the objective extends beyond compiling wins. It includes completing a cultural transformation that expands how success and leadership are defined in modern college football. Those who predict his decline overlook the underlying traits, faith, perseverance, and purpose that have supported Sanders throughout his career. Doubts, rumors, and disproportionate scrutiny have followed him from playing days into coaching, and he has consistently responded with results. His current health setback is another obstacle, not a conclusion. The broader initiative he leads, centered on authenticity, opportunity, and high standards, continues. When Sanders returns to the sideline, it will mark the next stage of a movement he has guided from Jackson State to Boulder. The recent period of quiet has been strategic rather than passive. Instead of defending himself in daily briefings, Sanders focused on rehabilitation, remote program oversight, and family support. Each brief social media message reinforced a consistent theme: faith and preparation. He has articulated gratitude for medical professionals and has reiterated that his mission at Colorado is unfinished. His public references to scripture have been direct but measured, aligning with his long-standing practice of integrating faith into leadership. By walking through his ranch with Lil Wayne, Sanders signaled continuity. The clip underscored that influential supporters remain engaged, that Sanders' broader network values his vision, and that he remains capable of navigating physical challenges. The visible limp was not evidence of imminent retirement. Rather, it documented the reality of ongoing recovery and the resilience with which he approaches each obstacle. Colorado's athletic administration and football staff continue to affirm Sanders' program direction. Recruitment communications cite his established record in fostering cultural relevance and national exposure. Prospective athletes respond to a coach who presents a transparent path to development, both on and off the field. Current players refer to Sanders' coaching points with clarity, citing specific drills and expectations that remain unchanged during his absence. These indicators demonstrate that the core structures Sanders implemented are functioning, and that his return will be an amplification, not a restart. Criticism regarding Sanders' public persona often conflates media style with coaching substance. Analysis from opponents suggests that social media engagement dilutes football preparation, yet Sanders' staffs emphasize time management and delegation. Defensive and offensive coordinators handle in-game adjustments, while Sanders directs overall culture, recruitment, and leadership. He has articulated that visibility serves to amplify program accomplishments and enhance player opportunities, not replace strategic football planning. Some commentary has attempted to reframe Sanders' health issue as evidence that his coaching model is unsustainable. The argument ignores the documented health challenges faced by numerous coaches across levels of competition. For example, college coaches recovering from heart procedures or joint replacements have returned to successful seasons after appropriate medical clearance. Sanders' case follows a comparable trajectory. Medical complications require temporary separation, structured rehabilitation is prioritized, and a managed return is planned. Institutional medical protocols at Colorado dictate clearance requirements. Sanders will meet those before resuming full sideline duties. Colorado's players have expressed public confidence in Sanders' eventual return, citing regular virtual check-ins and continued accountability. Several athletes noted that positional meetings included recorded messages from Sanders reinforcing tactical goals and personal discipline. These details confirm that Sanders has remained actively engaged, albeit remotely, and that team culture remains aligned with his principles. Looking ahead, Colorado's schedule will attract national attention, both for on-field competitiveness and the storyline of Sanders' comeback. Analysts will evaluate how quickly he reestablishes day-to-day rhythm and whether his physical limitations influence practice oversight. Internal planning accommodates gradual escalation of responsibilities, with medical staff and strength and conditioning personnel contributing to phase reintegration. The broader significance of Sanders' return extends beyond Colorado. His visibility continues to challenge prevailing narratives about leadership styles and pathways in college athletics. By prioritizing authenticity, open articulation of faith, and cultural expression, Sanders offers a contrasting template to more conventional models. His eventual recovery and sideline presence will reinforce the argument that diverse leadership profiles can succeed in elite collegiate competition. In summary, rumors of Deion Sanders' coaching demise were premature. Verified reports confirm a substantial but temporary medical setback. He used the time away to focus on health, sustain program engagement, and rely on a support system anchored in family, friends, and faith. His recent public appearance demonstrated active recovery and reaffirmed his intention to resume leadership in Boulder. The forthcoming season will test Colorado on the field, but it will also underscore the durability of Sanders' vision, one that combines competitive ambition with cultural resonance. Observers who continue to question his longevity overlook the resilience and purpose that have defined his career. Sanders' return is imminent, and the movement he leads remains intact. Shedeur Sanders did not treat day 4 of Brown's training camp as anything other than work. He completed 8 of 11 passes with 3 touchdowns, operating with control and accuracy throughout the red zone periods. The throws were varied, a well-placed ball to rookie Luke Floria that led him across the goal line in stride, a firm throw to Cade McDonald over middle after a quick read, and a tight window completion to Deontay Johnson at the back of the end zone with 2 defenders closing. The sequence showed timing, poise, and placement under pressure. While national attention centered on Joe Flacco's underneath completions and Kenny Pickett's option and rollout periods, Sanders produced scoring plays on schedule. The performance was not the product of broken coverages or end-of-period reps. It came within structured work, with defenders in position and the offense executing standard progressions. The accuracy rate, 8 completions on 11 attempts, reflected consistent mechanics and decisions. The operation was steady from huddle to snap to finish. Despite that session, the distribution of first-team snaps did not change. Camp logs indicated that Pickett and Dillon Gabriel continued rotating with the starters, while Sanders remained primarily with the second unit. With the first preseason game approaching, that choice drew more attention from observers who expected productive days to be followed by expanded opportunities. The question surfaced again: what additional evidence is required to evaluate Sanders with the top group? The 3 touchdowns illustrated different aspects of his profile. On the throw to Floria, Sanders used a measured trajectory to lead the receiver away from contact and into the end zone. On the ball to Johnson, he identified leverage, held the safety with his shoulders, and delivered to a precise spot at the back line. On the throw to McDonald, he eliminated the first read, reset, and drove the ball into the window before the hook defender could squeeze it. Each score reflected a particular tool: anticipation, manipulation, and velocity within standard timing. Comparisons to the other quarterbacks were straightforward. Pickett produced 2 touchdowns but placed 1 late ball that exposed a receiver to contact near the goal line. Gabriel accounted for 1 score, with additional gains coming on checkdowns and designed movement. Flacco advanced the ball in short increments without finishing drives during the same period. Sanders converted opportunities into points repeatedly and without turnovers. The rotation, however, remained unchanged. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and the staff continued to allocate first-team work to the same group, describing the process as an open evaluation. In practice, that has meant extended starter reps for Pickett and Gabriel, veteran scripts for Flacco, and second unit periods for Sanders. The disconnect between output and opportunity was notable, particularly given the stated goal of reaching an early decision at quarterback. When asked about the timeline recently, Stefanski said the preference was to decide sooner rather than later, an acknowledgement that the window for assessment is limited as preseason approaches. Speculation about motives is common in such situations. The discussion has included references to front office perspectives and ownership influence. Owner Jimmy Haslam is widely viewed as supportive of drafting Sanders. General manager Andrew Berry is known for prioritizing fit, traits, and process within the roster building model. Stefanski reports to Berry, and the practice plan reflects coaching evaluation within organizational parameters. None of that guarantees any outcome. It does explain why rotations can remain conservative even after strong individual periods. periods. Regardless of internal views, the most useful next step for the evaluation would be a defined set of first-team snaps for Sanders to put comparable tape next to his peers. There was also outside attention on several practice segments from earlier in camp that showed Sanders throwing during lulls to non-receiver personnel, ball attendants, staffers, and assistants, while other quarterbacks were in script with full units. Those clips circulated widely and were interpreted by some as dismissive. Sanders addressed questions about it by narrowing the focus to preparation, explaining that his responsibility is to be ready for the work assigned and that he has adjusted at every level of competition, from HBCU ball to the Power 5 and now the NFL. The response matched his general approach: acknowledge the situation, maintain routine, and continue to execute when the next period begins. The broader draft day and narrative context remains part of the conversation. Sanders' college resume included efficient production and high completion rates across 2 programs, culminating in national recognition such as the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. His selection in the 5th round was driven by varying evaluations of projection, scheme fit, and development timelines. The result is the current environment. He must present his case within limited windows, then wait for access to the next rung of competition. That does not make the process unfair, it makes it exacting. The best answer, for him and for the staff, is additional, comparable reps and clear tape. Fan reaction after day 4 was direct. Social accounts and comment threads filled with assessments that centered on performance rather than reputation. Sanders produced 3 touchdowns, avoided negative plays, and showed command in the red zone. Supporters pointed to that tape and asked for opportunities with the starters to verify whether the same rhythm carries over with the top receivers and linemen. The message was not about headlines. It was about the logic of evaluation in a compressed calendar. From an operational standpoint, Sanders' day reflected consistent fundamentals. His base was disciplined, his eyes matched his feet, and his timing aligned with route depths. On the Johnson score, he used a subtle shoulder turn to hold the safety before resetting and throwing to the back line. On the McDonald throw, the ball was out on the second hitch, arriving before the defenders could converge. On the Floria play, the arc and placement minimized the hit risk and maximized the run-through. Those are portable traits. They translate across units if the timing with receivers is established through reps. The staff's balancing act is real. They must prepare the presumed week 1 starter with sufficient continuity while also giving developmental players enough exposure to judge ceiling and floor. That tension is present in every camp. The cleanest path through it is to carve out defined first-team sequences for each competitor and evaluate the tape against comparable defenses and situations: high red zone, low red zone, 3rd and medium, and 2-minute. Sanders' performance on day 4 strengthened the case for such an allocation. Context matters off the field as well. Earlier in the offseason, 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, prompted public comment from Barry, who emphasized standards and safety. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents and moved on. In camp, he has kept the focus on football tasks, install retention, cadence management, protection IDs, and post-practice review. He has also continued to build rapport across position groups, including veteran receivers and defensive backs, so that timing and expectations are clear when reps arrive. None of this diminishes the experience of the veterans in the room. Flacco has decades of film, Pickett has multiple seasons of NFL starts, and Gabriel brings mobility and a defined collegiate profile. It does, however, underscore the purpose of camp, to align decisions with current performance. Sanders produced the most efficient scoring period of the day. The next logical step is to see that operation with the starting unit, document the results, and compare them to the other candidates under the same conditions. The preseason opener will compress timelines further. Install packages expand, and coaches begin to narrow personnel groupings. If the objective is to identify the quarterback who can operate the offense most cleanly on Sundays, then structured exposure now will give the staff better information later. A small but deliberate set of first-team snaps for Sanders, scripted early downs, a 3rd down sequence, and a red zone series would provide data without disrupting broader preparation. Until that occurs, Sanders can only continue to control process and execution. Day 4 showed what that looks like when opportunities align: efficient reads, disciplined mechanics, and finishes in the end zone. He did not seek attention for the sequence. He put it on tape. If the evaluation remains consistent with the stated competition, comparable snaps should follow. If they do, the staff will have a clear side-by-side measure. If they do not, the question from observers will remain the same: what more needs to be seen to justify the look? For now, the record from day 4 is clear. 8 completions on 11 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, red zone precision, consistent control at the line and in the pocket. Those are tangible outputs. They merit a defined opportunity with the starters as the team moves toward preseason and the decision that follows. Whether or not that opportunity arrives immediately, Sanders has shown the preparation and execution necessary to be evaluated on equal footing. The next step is a matter of allocation, not speculation.